Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Business Success Series presented by Manulife. Time management, how to effectively navigate work-life balance and planning. My name is Ian McLean, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity, regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you'll join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is a safe and welcoming space for all. We know that there's more that we can do, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session, like all chamber events, would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors and partners. So a special thank you to our title sponsor for the Business Success Series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and April's sponsor, the Region of Waterloo. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so we can reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please comment in the chat section, and a representative of our team will get back to you momentarily. If you have a question for today's speaker, please, I'll gather those in the chat function and get our speaker to answer those throughout the session. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation and be also made available on the Greater KW Chamber website. I'd like to now invite Sana Chowdhury, Manager of Economic Development with the Region of Waterloo, to introduce today's guest. Sana.
Thank you, Ian. The region is proud to be this month's presenting sponsor of the Business Success Series. I have the privilege of introducing today's guest, Kylie Paul. Kylie Paul is a vision planner who has made it her mission to empower everyone around her by activating their awareness and giving effective tools to create and enjoy their ideal lives. She's a single mother of 2 boys who's acting CEO of 3 companies. Her schedule and lifestyle became more demanding, and in response, she developed efficient strategies to maximize her time, organization, and execution in life and business. Kylie's former speaking engagements consist of podcasts, leadership conferences, the Venture Capital World Summit conference, mentoring, and speaking in Kitchener-Waterloo area for 7 years with junior achievement, the KW Chamber of Commerce, the Business and Education Partnership for the Waterloo Region, and the Waterloo Region Small Business Association. Thank you for joining us today. I'll now pass it back to Ian.
Well, thanks so much, Sana, and we appreciate the support of the region with this month's series in April. Kylie, I don't know where you find the time, because that's you got a lot of responsibilities. So you are well suited to talk about time management, and I guess the place to start. We've got some questions we're going to get to, but no session would be complete without starting, in my mind, with a conversation around how COVID has impacted you, and so maybe just reflect a little bit on what has changed, because we all experienced it differently. This is something that I don't think there's anyone that's immune to. It disrupted our lives, our personal lives, our professional lives, and there's been a lot of stress, continues to be a lot of stress. So I think today what we want to get to is what are some of the tools moving forward, but maybe kind of reflect on the last, I guess it's 25 months now. We've been living in this COVID environment, with the hope that we're coming out of it, but COVID's still around. So that will still be one of those things that we need to be conscious of. But maybe a few reflections on that, which will kind of get us into the discussion around time management and affecting, managing your work-life balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Ian, for having me. And thank you, Sana, for the lovely introduction. Of course, COVID was a huge derailment to my previous routine and schedule of going into the office and seeing my team every day, dropping my kids off at school and daycare, and having those physical barriers between my time and being able to kind of mentally switch over with the physical barriers. So my drive from dropping off the kids at school and daycare to the office, I could mentally switch to leader, team leader, boss mode, business mode. And then again, on the way home, going to pick them up, I had the car drive from the office to school and daycare to pick them up, to switch back to mom mode. And those physical barriers were taken away for an extended period of time, some of us longer, some of us shorter. And that had complete upheaval of my previous routine, right? Even I had my trainer was right by my office. I could walk there to the gym, then moving to a home gym situation with a virtual trainer and all of those things. So I think the biggest thing is just I allowed myself to acknowledge what was working and not working. So what had switched from my original schedule to my now home-based schedule. Now, my businesses, I was very, very fortunate that we were able to switch everything to online and work from home relatively easily and continue on. That we kind of figured that out on the fly. But me personally, having to go from dropping kids off at daycare and school and knowing that they're cared for to them being now home, and I still had a team to manage. And I was actually living with my parents' house for the additional support with the kids for from March 2020 to July 2020, which was a whole new dynamic, adding people into the household. We just bubbled up. So we had some extra support with the kids, but still switching mentally between leader, boss, business speaker, mom, friend, daughter, sister, all of those roles that I was fulfilling within a relatively short period, as in 5 seconds, it seemed like sometimes, where I was having to mentally switch, completely changed everything. So what I did was I just acknowledged what wasn't working anymore, and I think a lot of people too are going to the hybrid office and work from home model for an indefinite period of time now. So looking at what that was like for my schedule and how I wanted to change that and revisit that going forward, and what my team wanted to do and what worked best for my family and my situation. So what I did is just, I wasn't afraid to kind of look at it and completely change it and basically tear up my whole schedule that I had previously worked very hard on in my routine. And it was just time. It was time to switch it all over. That was a giant shift in our economy and in our country and globally, really. And I wasn't afraid to revamp it and create a new schedule that worked almost better, really, for my family, and proximity to distance to office and school and all those things, but also giving myself kind of more mental breaks throughout the day.
Well, I think that's a good starting off point. And your comment acknowledging what was working and what wasn't working as it related to COVID at the beginning. I'm pretty sure that that's still something that we can all learn from moving forward as we transition. Some will continue to do that work at home and still have to manage those boundaries between personal life and work. And some will be full return to work, quote, I wouldn't say back to normal, but back to a more traditional model. And there'll be a whole bunch of people in between. So this is a very timely topic as we think about mental health, the stress on families and kids, and the new way that we've had to react to COVID. And we're not going back to the way it was in January or February 2020. There are some fundamental things that have changed. So maybe, the first question, and I guess this is it's not a confined question, but what are some of the elements to maintaining a good work-life balance? Like what are some of the, if you're kind of saying, here are the 3 or 4 things you need to kind of get your arms around so that you can have that ability to manage that work life, those work life realities.
Yep, absolutely. So the number one thing I would say is really understanding what your priorities are for the day and the week. And and having those listed out in whatever way works for you. I'm a pen to paper and kind of an old school Brian Tracy, think on paper executor, but you can make sure that you know what your priorities are for the day and the week. That's number one. What you absolutely need to get done, whether that's in your home or in your professional life or in your role, whatever that may be very clear on that. And I set those intentions on Sundays, Sunday night, so that I know and have a little bit more mental clarity waking up on Monday, knowing what my day and my week is going to look like. Number two, which is kind of the next stage of that first tip, is to delegate anything that you can. So anything that's not on your important list or must complete list for the day or the week, how can you delegate that? Is there someone on your team that you can delegate something to? Is it time to maybe hire another administrator to help with some of those tasks that aren't essential, that your specific skill set, your specific strengths needs to execute? There are a lot of things in our day that we fill our kind of time with that we think that we need to complete, that are easily completed by someone else, or could be easily delegated to someone else. And then the third thing is, once you've decided to what your priorities are and when you're going to complete those, you have to be very consistent and strict with your boundaries for that. So I like to say, I gave this tip actually last week in the peer-to-peer group, is think of it when you're staying consistent with your boundaries. There are times when you're going to have to say no to those people around you asking things of you. And the way to think about it is, you're not saying no to someone else's request. You're saying yes to yourself. And this goes on with kind of the mental piece of the switching over to COVID and people still transitioning. When you set your intentions and your new schedule that is working better for you now in this time, prioritize your needs and what you need to execute, which a lot of the time we'll have to do with our families and our kids and things like that. But if you stick to that and say no to, I don't know, so something else that comes up randomly in your inbox or whatever, you're prioritizing yourself, and keeping those boundaries consistent is how I am able to execute so efficiently. It's how I'm able to run 3 teams at the same time and have my kids and prioritize my family and different activities for myself, right? So I'm very, very clear on my boundaries, and I stick to them, and I let everyone else know. So it's not also letting just you constantly say no to those around you. Make them aware of what your boundaries are. Like, tell your partner, tell your coworkers, this is my time frame for this activity. I'd be more than happy to help you within that time frame. This time frame is my focus working activity. I'm not available during this time. You know, everyone has focus work that they need to do, and they need to kind of have time set aside for and no distractions. So just let people know that, like, this is my time frame to get this done, and then you're being respectful of their time and your own.
One of the things you mentioned, I kind of laughed. You said your paper, write it down. I'm more of a yellow sticky, and my staff will remember this. From 2 years around, I would walk around with 5 or 6 stickies on my finger, because I'd say I got to talk to and walk from office to office. It still helps me to write things down and say, what do I got to get accomplished tomorrow, or meetings, kids, the whole thing. But I look at there's what are the specific tools that you use for time management, and I guess part of that would be, there's technology, there's the boundaries that you're talking about. But if you're looking and saying, you think, what are the things you're doing to maintain that good work-life balance, which you've just described? What are the practical tools, right? Because it's one thing to mentally say, I'm going to say from 2 to 3 is when I got to do my CEO report for the board of directors meeting that's next Tuesday, and that's when I'm going to do it. Life gets in the way sometimes, right? The crisis of the day, the personal crisis, but there's got to be some tools that you use practically to kind of achieve that goal of having those boundaries that you describe them.
Yeah, so I would say 2 things to that. So one, my kind of Outlook calendar, Google Calendar. I make sure that any kind of event or meeting is 100% scheduled in there. So this event, I message as soon as they ask me, has to be in my calendar. It doesn't exist for me. Again, I'm a paper person, so I have a physical planner that goes with me everywhere. That is as important as my right arm, to be honest. So when I'm talking about my time blocking and things like that, that's where I keep all of that information. And I also have, like, when I revamp my routine schedule for my weeks, I'll do it in an Excel sheet just so I can visualize it. Then I typically translate that to my physical planner. And the other thing is, when I mentioned having your priorities for the day, I make sure that those get done. And that can mean they get done and it's 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning, and then I get to kind of relax for a little bit or move on to the next task. Or if things come up during the day, things that are unexpected, then I'm getting them done after the boys are in bed, and I'm staying up and I'm making sure that those items get done. It doesn't happen every day. You know what I mean? I'm not staying up till 2 a.m. every night, but there are nights that I am staying up in order to make sure that I'm going to execute what I need to on the next day, because that snowball effect can get out of control really quickly. And that's when people feel overwhelmed and exhausted and anxiety, and that can lead to depression and other mental fatigue. So when you commit to doing those activities, and I'm also like, it takes time to know how many things you can execute in a day. And even sometimes I overestimate what I can accomplish in a day, but I've got it pretty down pat. You know yourself, and you put down on your list what you can execute in that day, and then you get it done. You're staying committed to yourself and your intentions and making sure that you're executing that consistently. It's for yourself ultimately. Hopefully a lot of those items on your list aren't only for someone else. Hopefully you are getting some benefit out of them as well. But like I said, things come up. My son the other night had a nightmare at 11 o'clock at night, and I was still working in bed. So I brought him in bed with me. I turned my brightness all the way down on my computer, and then I got it done. Things are going to come up always. That's unavoidable. Some days can be a complete off, right? And you just accept that and move on to the next day, and then get all your tasks done.
So if I look at and I've kind of references, everyone will have a similar challenge, right? You're talking about the priorities, the things you got to get done in a day, and then you've got your week, which is, I got to get this project done so I'm set for next week. But there's also, it's no different in politics. They'd say, what's the thing you fear most? And events, my dear boy, events, because something comes up. And so that crisis can crowd out your thing. And you can't plan for a crisis other than, is part of this not being so packed that you can't react to something that happens. So having some space, thinking time, time that is for that call you haven't made, but also can be some buffer zone that when the crisis of the day comes up, because there always is virtually every day. Are those the sorts of things that you need to kind of be, again, part of your boundary, but also part of setting your using your time effectively, for lack of a better way of describing it?
Absolutely. So I'm sure some of the people on the call have heard of the executive coach method and how to implement that. So that has buffer time, which is your administrative activities, things that come up unexpectedly, and then focus work time. So I use those two kind of categories when I'm scheduling in my daily routine. And to answer your question, yes, I do have flex time scheduled in to my week, so that I know if Monday gets out of control and I've lost the time, then I have that flex time on Wednesday or Thursday to wrap that up before the end of the week. I don't recommend having flex time on Friday, because you will likely be exhausted and not as motivated to complete it because it's so close to the weekend for most of you. But having flex time on a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon to complete things that you may have missed on Monday or had to handle an unintended crisis helps out a lot. Absolutely.
One of the things that you talk about prioritizing tasks. So, I mean, you talked a little bit about this, but as we think about prioritizing tasks, one of the most intrusive things, at least, and I don't say intrusive isn't the right word, but the thing that comes up that I think many of us, certainly I do, I struggle with this, is emails. Emails or texts come in, and I think we're all attached to our phone. And I don't know whether it's a need to be needed, but as soon as the light goes out, I've started turning off all of the or sounds and what, just so I don't get out of the habit of always checking that. But as you're doing work, emails are one of those distractions, right? And and I guess, how do you manage even that part of it, right? As you prioritize tasks, email, getting to what you need to get to, but how often do you check it, and how do you use the technology, not be captive to the technology?
Yep. So I would consider emails a buffer activity, because answering emails and kind of cleaning out your emails is an administrative task. And then if there's a project within the emails, then that would be a focus activity. So I typically clean out my inbox on Sunday nights, honestly, before Monday morning, so that it's not a surprise on a Monday morning that can be overwhelming and drowning first thing. But I honestly schedule an email time. And when I'm having my focus time, I'm X'd out of my emails. It's closed off of my computer. My phone is on silent. Usually if I'm working from home, it's downstairs while I'm working upstairs. If I'm in an office, I have it in another room so that I'm not tempted. I'm not immune to those notifications or anything either. But if you put a physical barrier or make it as difficult as possible for you to access those distractions, then you can stay committed to your focused work that you have in front of you.
Now, some of this has been the how to manage the various demands on your time, and as many watching will be entrepreneurs, and so they do everything, right? Their business development, their project managers, their HR, they do every job. As for many businesses, I think the latest stats we just looked at, 68 or 70% of our businesses would have 20 employees or less, and it's like 60% have 10 employees or less, and almost half have 3 or less. You're talking about the vast majority of businesses being really small teams, so you're managing a whole bunch of things. I guess maybe that's part of the answer. Is that the why you need to be critical? You need to make it a critical function of your day to manage your time effectively. I mean, we got so many things on the go. So what is the why of managing your time effectively, and what does it bring you?
Well, first of all, I can say that I can relate to 60 or 70% of the entrepreneurs in the chamber, because one of my teams is 4 or 5 full-time people. Another of my teams is 4 partners. So I've got small teams too that I'm managing, and I'm doing and have done the majority of the department management for the better part of 8 years. So I can completely empathize. And absolutely, the reason for me was because I wanted to be present with my kids at the end of the day. When I picked them up from school, I didn't want to be attached to my phone, attached to my email, waiting on sales calls, taking calls while I'm supposed to be playing with them. So I wanted to be as effective and efficient as possible in the day while they're at school, while they're at daycare, whatever, to make sure that I could be present at the end of the day. And then again, like I said, if I needed to pick back up after they're in bed, a lot of times that happens. A lot of times that's going to happen for entrepreneurs that have kids, especially young ones in the first starting years of growing your business. And now that can change and evolve as you add staff and add some admin support and things like that. They can shift, but there's still going to be things that need your attention. So my reason for creating all of these systems and tools were for myself. I wanted to be present with my kids. I wanted to not feel the anxiety of having to check my email every 5 minutes and get everything answered and make sure that things were done for the day. And And the other reason, and the reason that things kind of fall backwards, is you're working towards your mission. You're working towards your vision, whether that's your personal vision or mission, your business vision and mission. So when I talk about like how to set your priorities for the day, how I work it is backwards. So I have my 5-year goals, I have my 3-year goals, I have my 1-year goals. Then I break those down by quarter, by month, by week, so that everything is accessible little chunks that can be executed as priorities on a daily basis. So knowing what you're working towards should be everyone's why, and having a very clear vision of what you're working towards.
You referenced it. I think you were at one of, I'm not sure which peer-to-peer you were at, but I think you were at one of our peer-to-peers, and you've done speaking. What are, and so unless me asking the question, as opposed to you reflecting, what were some of the questions, concerns that were coming from other CEOs, right? That, I mean, I think it was the CEO peer-to-peer, if I'm not mistaken, but what were some of those other business owners and entrepreneurs? What were the questions they were asking you? And for people watching, if you're not part of our peer-to-peers, smaller groups, usually between 10 and 20, who are regular, there's a comfort in having familiarity because it's the same group for on a regular basis, sharing experiences, sharing questions. So it's that group learning and group support. And we've been doing that now for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. So it's a good cross section of people from within the chamber and across different business sectors and with different roles. What were some of the issues? Are my questions kind of reflective of what they were talking about, or were there other issues that they found to be, or that they needed help answering for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, explaining how buffer time and focus time works in execution and scheduling was helpful for that group. They had questions around prioritizing the actions and how to kind of stay on task during the day. So having that kind of flex and permission or freedom to have buffer time, which is admin time, and then being transparent with your coworkers or your family or whoever is around you about when your focus time is, where you need no distractions and you need to accomplish whatever tasks are on your list for that day, was one of the questions. Also, getting back into the office environment and how to avoid the being at the water cooler kind of talk all day, and how to be respectful to your coworkers that are coming back, but also to get done what you needed to get done, right? And again, it's just the transparency with your schedule and how you're going to arrange your day, and letting people know what you're up to and how to stay consistent with that. The other thing I mentioned, which was what I implemented with my team during kind of one of our longer stay work from home periods, was they were kind of struggling sitting at their desks all day and staying focused. And I said, you guys can schedule in breaks during the day. Give yourself shorter sprint times of focus time, 2 hours or 90 minutes or whatever it is, and then go outside for a walk, or go make yourself a latte or a smoothie. Get out of the house, go pick up a couple things that you need to take your dog for a walk. Whatever it is, scheduling in those 10, 15-minute breaks throughout the day, and allowing yourself to really hone in on the task at hand, and then you have something to look forward to on a consistent basis, on a daily basis. So I recently did a review with my mom about the book that was The Power of Having Fun. So it was studies done on high power CEOs that were working 80, 100 hours a week and having no time for their family, et cetera, et cetera. And once they really looked at their productivity and did a study on deep down what they were actually accomplishing during those 80 or 100 hours, they were only actively working for 40 of those hours. So that means that they were there, present physically, but weren't actually productive during those additional 40 to 60 hours, right? So they said to schedule in some of those fun breaks, and some of them were described were having a little putting green in your office and taking 10 or 20 putts, getting outside for a walk, doing some physical movement, some jumping jacks, phoning your partner to check in on them, like just little things throughout the day that you can look forward to that are going to break up your time.
So one of the things, and you mentioned that, I mean, the notion that if you're working 80 hours, is it really an 80 hours of productive time? And assuming, and I think if you're working that many hours, the answer has got to be no, because no one can focus for 80 hours in a week. It's not
other
possible.
Than Bill Gates, I think, or Mark Zuckerberg, but that was a long time ago for them too.
Anyways, I think it would certainly be the rare exception versus the rule, that you can do that. So, but getting through what you got to get through, and you've described sort of your focus time and your flex time and various things. What are the strategies, if you will, for your multitasking? Because there's going to be and I guess one of the questions to start this off is multitasking doing two things, like I'm on a Zoom call and I'm doing emails on my phone, or is multitasking say, here's the multitude of things I got to do in the day, and how do I schedule that? I mean, I think there's some people, I'm probably guilty of this, of trying to do 2 or 3 things at once, and thinking that's multitasking, and probably not doing any of them as well as I would like.
Yeah, I think maybe you just answered it for the group there. We're only able to focus on one task at a time. And even when, for example, I'm sure a lot of people on here have kids, and you're cooking and answering their questions and getting lunch ready at the same time, that's probably the bulk of the multitasking you're going to be able to do. But you're also probably not looking at your child who's asking you a question and 100% focused on that. The cooking's probably self-contained or in a pot or something, that's doesn't need your active attention 100% of the time. So we can only focus on one thing at a time. And that's the reason that I make sure that I'm efficient with the time that I have and focus on the task at hand that I need to focus on. Another thing that I try to utilize when I am in, for example, my buffer time or flex time is first pass execution. So what that means is when an email comes in and I'm in my buffer time, I deal with that right away. If a letter comes across your desk or in your mailbox that needs to happen, you do it right there and then, so that you're not kind of passing it off for a different time. So if you're in your administrative time zone or time block, execute for everything that comes in, so that it's not dragging on till later. And then you get those activities and those little tasks done during that time.
I want to go back to you talked about delegation, I think right at the beginning as we started off. Is delegation one of those multitasking strategies? I mean, you still got to get the work done, but if you've got people saying, and I think you've referenced, if there's admin stuff you can get someone else to do that are better at details and the admin side of things, so you can focus on either business development, client service, or finance, whatever the other more important value add that you can bring to your business. Is that delegation actually, it sounds to me or feels like I certainly know I couldn't, whatever we do at the chamber is not because of any of the work that I do. It's because I have 17 people who are doing the work. And so I think that delegation is and being able to let go of that is got to be a big part of what your strategy is talking about. Absolutely.
And I think another layer to that is, like, I'm a mom and a business owner. I'm sure there are probably others on here who was the primary caregiver for my kids for their first 6 years of life, and dedicated the majority of my time to that. And then once they're in school full time and those sort of things happen and you are able to actually delegate some things, you tend to hold on to them and want to own that responsibility, and freeing up your time and focusing on your core strength, what you're vision is, how you want to have an impact on this world and this time that we're currently in, that's what you're here to do. You're here to let your gift shine. You're here to execute in what you're supposed to be executing in. And the remainder is delegating. There are people that are phenomenal childcare workers, and that is their gift. That is their strength. There are people that get so much joy out of cleaning or doing yard work or whatever it is, and that is their gift. So when we think about delegating, we often have a lot of guilt around that, or guilt about having a housekeeper or someone to help with the kids or whatever it is, this and that, cooking, different things. But when you're delegating to someone that they love doing that activity, you're giving them a gift too. You're freeing up your own time to do things that you were meant to do. And then you're giving them the opportunity to let their gift shine, and they get to execute in the task that is their greatest strength.
Yeah, I think that there's an element of, and I in the past have struggled with this. There's an element of, as you're, especially when you're, and for some watching, some will be newer or early or mid career. There's a tendency that feeling of being needed or being indispensable means that you hold on to more than what you should. And I think I hear you saying, there's that you can try, and your worth can be tied up in that, or it could be tied up in boy, when I give a project to Santa or Kylie, holy crap, it is just like top notch, because no one's concerned that you didn't do your, I don't know, whatever, your expense report on a certain day. They're like, wow, that project was outstanding. I mean, that's a struggle I think many people would have, not just at the most senior levels, but right throughout your personal and business life.
Yeah, and you can explore different talents that people have too. A lot of us are put into a role or apply for a role at an organization or company, and you have that skill set, and you can execute on whatever the job description was, but you might have other talents that are undiscovered, and you might not even know about them. So an example is one of my more junior team members. She was hired as a regulatory coordinator. So that's mainly research and scientific technical writing. We discovered that she is incredible at graphic design for some marketing things. So we were able to combine a couple of her talents, and now like 10% of her time, we utilize that skill set that she has, because it takes me hours to do those kinds of things. And a couple of other team members, that's way beyond their scope of strength, right? So instead of kind of hiring externally, we discovered this talent internally that she is able to do. So by just trying different tasks and things, you might stumble upon something that you actually really enjoy doing and do really well. And then that kind of frees up some time for somebody else.
So I want to kind of get to, for you personally, what is time management? And I guess maybe the piece of the question I want to get at is, how do you know when you're successful? I mean, like you're sharing this with us, and this is helpful to get us thinking in a different way. But if you say, if I said, what is time management to you, and how do you know if you're successful? What does that? How would you answer that?
I know I'm successful with my time management when I feel aligned with myself and can be present in everything that I'm doing. So I don't have the back of my head overwhelm and anxiety kind of creeping in, because again, I'm an entrepreneur. I have been through the full spectrum of mental challenges and obstacles, and been depressed in my bed for multiple days at the early stages, so I'm not immune to any of those feelings or reactions or any of that. Trust me, I've been through it all. I used to have a saying, actually, in the beginning, in the first 3 years of starting your business: if you're not crying every day, you're doing it wrong. It was our like little entrepreneur group saying. So I'm not immune to any of that. But now that I know myself really well, I know what I'm capable, and I also have all of these tasks and assignments and teams in front of me and companies to build, when I am able to be present in all of those activities, like right now, I don't know where my phone is. I don't have my email open. I'm present with you guys. This is the only thing that I have open, right? I've got my water beside me, but that's about it. So I'm able to be present. I don't feel anxious about anything that's sitting in my inbox. I've completed all the tasks I needed to for the day. I feel great. I know what I'm doing after this. I know what I get to do after this. So when I feel aligned and I'm able to be present in everything that I'm doing, I feel successful.
And I guess, is that also part of, starts to answer the question of why it's important in your, well, all of our, but in your daily life? Because all of these things are, and what we've talked about today are all building blocks. There's not one piece of this. There's a whole bunch of stuff you got to do. And I guess it's like it's a mind shift, or you've got to, in some ways, think a different way. I don't think this is something everyone could do it, but you have to make a conscious choice to think about some of these things differently. Is that why you feel it's so important in your life, in your daily life, and why you're sharing this with others?
Absolutely. Like I've made the decision to own my time as kind of how I call it, owning my time, not necessarily controlling my time, because I can't, like we mentioned multiple times, there are things that are going to come up that are beyond my control, but I can own how I use my time that I have and execute the way that I want to, and doing the tasks that use my strengths, allow me to feel aligned, allow me to consistently move towards my vision. And then the other thing is, if you've read off everything that I'm currently up to, I'm also a teacher at the business school at Conestoga. So I've got a lot of big things on my plate, not all little things. And being a mom is the biggest thing, on my plate. So if it weren't for me making that decision to own my time and create a schedule and a routine that works for me and my family, I'd be on a ball on the floor probably the most of the time, wondering how I was going to get everything done, And I've been through multiple stages of overwhelm and multiple stages of shifting how I'm doing things. But like I said in the beginning, you have to allow yourself to kind of tear up what you were doing before and not be afraid to revamp what's working.
We got a few minutes left. A couple more questions. One is, and you referenced that you're coaching others, but you must have folks that help you too. I think that the supports that we have, and some of this could be personal, right? Whether you have family or friends that help you. I'm a single dad, so when the kids had needed to come home because there was a lice outbreak, it was me that was doing that. And so having a team that supports you when things come up, because the one thing I think you've highlighted, and I think everyone knows it's on this call and will watch this, is there is no such thing as a perfect day or a perfect week in business. There is something going to go wrong, and how you react to that. But some of that is the supports that you have, whether it's on your team, mentors, and you're obviously providing some of that to your team. But maybe talk a little bit about that part of it, right? Like, you have your plan, you've got your time management, you've set your boundaries. To your point, own your time, understand your priorities. So you've done all of that, and then life happens. How do you, utilize the people that can support you to feel that calm, or that ability to kind of get through the bumps that come along the way?
Absolutely. Well, it's dependent on whatever the situation is and what's going on, right? I have my mom's great to talk to about kids stuff, because obviously she's been through it. I have business mentors. I have mentors that have built businesses a lot longer than I have in the industries that where my companies are. So in the natural health area, that I can reach out to, that I can text to. I actually recently had a really rough month in December in business, and reached out to quite a few of my CEO friends in the industry. And we just had powwows. I'm like, hey, do you just have time to just talk this out with me and basically make me feel better about what's happening, and just allowing yourself to, one, have those relationships and create a really solid support network for yourself. but it also just be vulnerable and share what's happening. Because if I hadn't opened up, and again, probably first thing I did was a lot of journaling and a lot of self-coaching, and I have a life coach and I have business coaches and things like that. But really getting clear on what was bugging me, and then just talking it out with people that I trust, that are vulnerable with me. And I think as entrepreneurs, that's a huge thing. We don't always talk about the bad days and the catastrophes that can happen, or bad months, let alone a bad day. So building that support network. And I mean, I met a few of my mentors through the chamber, and having that solid network and being able to build those bonds outside of the events and outside of formal coaching or anything like that is important. And the other thing is I've evolved from multiple business coaches. And I think people are probably maybe afraid to do that when you've reached kind of the maximum of what your coach is able to give you, because they have their own skill set and strengths, right? And then being able to say, thank you, I appreciate everything that I've learned from you, and I'm ready to move on to the next person, because everyone has different experiences, everyone has different network, a different industry or subcategory or whatever it is that they have experience in, or they manage bigger teams, or whatever the case may be on what you need support on, whether it's leadership or business or finance or sales or whatever. Allowing yourself to also seek out new mentors when you feel like you've kind of maxed out of your current mentor.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think for entrepreneurs and executives, especially in small and medium-sized business, they probably don't work on that enough, of reaching out and asking those questions. One of the interesting, you raised that over the last 2 years, the Business Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region, which is the two chambers, Communitech, Waterloo EDC, and Explore Waterloo, which is hospitality and tourism. We would meet periodically and see each other at events. And then COVID hit. And for, 9 months, we were on the phone every day, because there was no handbook. There was no, don't know what we're doing, what help do people need in different sectors. But with what is, and I hesitate to say silver linings to COVID, but I think one of the positive things that will come out is that notion that there are senior people who kind of can identify with what you're going through. And so that, whether it's formal coaching, mentors, people you've worked with in the past that know you, that's a pretty powerful, talent or skill to have to help you manage yourself. Listen, last thing I wanted to touch on, and maybe just in the last couple of minutes we have, a couple of things resonated with me. I said them, is understanding your priorities for the day and the week, and owning your own time are, I think, things that I've kind of stuck in my brain. But it's kind of pulling this together. What would be the 2 or 3 things that you want to leave people with from this hour together, of saying, you can change, you've got the ability to do it. Here's how it's going to, how, we've talked about how it can make things better, but people need, you talk about the piece of paper, I talk about the yellow sticky. I want to write down, what are the 5 things I need to do to kind of start myself on that. What would you say to folks?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing, I would really highly encourage everyone to physically write something down, whether that's pen to paper, pen to sticky note, or stylus to laptop, or stylus to an iPad or Remarkable, whatever that is. That physical act of writing tells your brain that this is important. So not only do you have a visual reminder, you have a physical memory reminder, and that gets triggered to your brain. So when you're deciding to write this time blocking schedule for yourself, and I have a winning week program that I run through how I do it in detail of my week, is that you got to look at what makes you happy. What brings you joy? What is your strength that you want to do in a week, in a month, and execute on? And then set aside the time for it. One thing that one of my mentors said, and I'm sure maybe multiple of us have heard it, is you schedule in a doctor's appointment. Why do we feel bad scheduling time with our friends, or a call with our moms, or time with our kids, dinner with our kids, an activity with our kids? Schedule it in. That's the importance of it. You're not treating them like a business activity. You're giving importance to that. So that's another thing, is just getting real with yourself on what do you want to spend your time on? How do you want to own and experience your time? And then stay consistent with those boundaries. Again, you're not saying no to somebody, you're saying yes to yourself. And it does take time. So allow yourself to be really committed to this new schedule. I say a minimum of 30 days. Execute the way that you wrote it down. And then if something is really, really not working in that, then you can tweak it a little bit and revisit it. But you're not going to know if something isn't working unless you've executed consistently for 30 days, because every week is different. Every day is different. Things are going to come up. If you go through 1 week and you're like, no, that doesn't work. Well, next week's going to be different, right? So execute at least for 30 days the way that you've set it down intentionally. And then if something needs to shift after that, do it. And then revisit it on a 6-month schedule. Revisit it twice a year and see, hey, this is working, or your kids' activities switch over from hockey to soccer, and then they're different times, so just let yourself do that, but stay consistent for the majority of the part. A lot of people know the 80-20 rule. So, and that goes for nutrition as well as time management. Execute as you planned it at least 80% of the time, and leave 20% for your flex time.
Listen, that's fascinating discussion. Really want to thank you, Kylie, for joining us today. Given that you have nothing on your calendar, I'm just kidding. You got so much on your calendar. Appreciate you finding some time to spend it with us today. It really was helpful. So thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, that does bring us to the end of today's session. Again, thank you to our title sponsor for the series, Manulife. Our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and April sponsor, the Region of Waterloo. And finally, to all of you for joining us. As a reminder, we do host a new Business Success Series session every Wednesday at 1 p.m. To register or find more details about other upcoming events, please visit us at greaterkwchamber.com. And do share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us next week for another edition of the Business Success Series. Because if it's Wednesday, it's the Business Success Series. Thanks so much. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, Kylie.